Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. You know, I was seeing the videos that have been coming out with different stuff about, accessories that are being put on guns and retro rifles. And Colion Noir has a video where he shows the new a new M4 that is a clone correct copy of what FN released in, I think it was like 94, 96, or 2004, one of the times that they released the 16-inch variant of the M4, or the 14-inch variant. The real M4 is actually 14.5 inches for the barrel length. And he was talking about how it just functioned, and he just liked the way it looked, except for the handle. That's the only thing he hated. And it got me thinking about how we accessorize our rifles, how we put furniture on them. And for me, being an AK guy, one of the first things that I toss in the trash usually, well, not in the trash, I usually keep the stock sets, I don't know why, I have a pile of them, is the short-ass stock on the AK. I don't know what it is about Eastern philosophy that their weapon has to be so close to their nose. And can I use it? Absolutely. But it's the first thing I fix. I don't like the length of pull on a standard Kalashnikov. Lately, what I've done is I've gotten into collapsible stocks where I could adjust length of pull. So I have an M4 stock adapter on my SLR 106, and I have a BCM, Bravo Company Manufacturing, M4 stock on it. And then I started looking at my AR, my John Wick, quote-unquote, AR. And what I like about it is the rifle just fits, and it's got BCM furniture everywhere. Why did I choose BCM? Well, number one, I like BCM, but number two is the stuff fits. I understand Colion Noir's problem with the stock, the grip on the AR-15. I hate the stock AR-15 grip. That's usually one of the things I've replaced on any AR-15 I've ever had. I like rubberized grips, but I also like ones that have a certain feel, and I like the ones that are a little more forward than the ones that are stock replacements, if that makes sense, and that's one BCM has. I kitted mine out to look like John Wick's gun, except for the Keymod forend that he has, because I don't like Keymod. There's some other minor modifications I made to the mechanical pieces of it. But when I'm looking at these guns, the first iteration of the forend for the M4 or the AR-15 was a 4. It had 4 Picatinny rails on the front of it. It's quad, and usually you ended up having to put covers on it so that it didn't, one, burn your hand in the New Mexico sun, but two, those Picatinny pieces kind of cut in your hand when you're holding the gun a certain way, or especially if you're scorpion gripping it. And I don't hold mine like a scorpion grip, and I do like the gangster grip or the foregrip on the gun. It's different with the Kalashnikov. You can't do that because the magazine actually curves, so you have one of those stock foregrips, and you're going to run into it when you try to kick the magazine out. So you're going to have to cut it off, and that's what one of the trends I've seen. I look at Giga from Polymer Tactical, and he does that to every one of his AKs. But AKs with a foregrip. You could use an angle foregrip. I have one of those on my SLR 106. But what I also notice is that I don't use the foregrip like most guys do. For me, it's a hand stop. I don't quite scorpion grip where I reach across the top of the gun and drive the gun. I use the foregrip to pull into my shoulder to make it tighter so that I'm more accurate and that I feel like I'm in more control of the gun. Now, I don't chicken wing. That's where you have your arms way out. I learned from going to tactical classes and shooting classes that's probably not the way to go. But what is the key accessories for furniture? If you look at a Kalashnikov, let's go back to my SLR 106. I have a rubberized hand grip or hand guard and the match to go up top. Why? because I like the stickiness of it. I like the feel of it. And that's a lot of what I've noticed with myself as its personal taste. I'm not a big fan of the Kalashnikov's original grip. I replaced those again with rubberized grips. I like Hogue grips myself for the Kalashnikov. But that's not the case for the AR. The AR-15, I like BCM's furniture. I like their stocks because there's plenty of places where you can put a QD mount so you could put your sling wherever you want. And that excites me. That makes me want to do it. That's the other thing when it goes to forends. My Kalashnikovs, just like my AK or my AR, have M-LOK on them in the right places. Now, I use M-LOK rails where I usually put Picatinny there. I don't know why I still put Picatinny in there, because you can get direct M-LOK pieces that will allow you to accessorize it however you want. And you do this to make the rifle fit the shooter. And I'm thinking more and more along those lines, where I'm seeing these guys doing certain things and I'm wondering why they're doing it. I watched Forgotten Weapons where Ian roasts Giga's AK. Giga has a 308 AK that he's competing with at Finnish Brutality. And if you don't know what Finnish Brutality is, it's a shoot where a lot of the gun tubers go to, and it's in Europe, so it's in Finland. And they all decided, a good chunk of them decided to use 308 battle rifles this year. And I was thinking about it because Ian has dropped hints about what he does with his G3, what he's done to change it. Now, I am kind of a purist with my G3. I have one that's stock. It just has optics on it. Then I have another one that's kitted out to be more like a DMR, a designated marksman rifle. But when I did it, I couldn't afford the cool M-LOK one, which was a little lighter for the foregrip. I actually put one on that had the quad. And I'm actually happier with that because I can put my bipod out there and still get to where I can traverse, but it's actually very steady. And it allows me to set up and get ready to be a DMR if I think I'm going to do that. It just makes the rifle heavy. When you think about G3 specifically, the rifle is, somewhere about 9.5 pounds. You add anything to it, you're just adding weight. And something Colion Noir said that kind of stuck with me and kind of inspired this is like, how do you balance out your rifle? A heavy rifle, if it's very heavy in the fore end or very heavy in the rear end, it's an unwieldy gun. It makes it hard for you to use it in whatever role you're doing, whether it's hunting, shooting, sport shooting, tactical shooting, anything. It makes it difficult because it wears out parts of your body. And a really balanced rifle, one that when you hold it has that good center point of balance, allows you to do a lot of things with it. And I found myself putting more heavier stuff on the back of a Kalashnikov to do exactly that, to compensate for the fact that the gun is already naturally front heavy. The natural point of hold for the Kalashnikov isn't where we would shoot it as American shooters. It actually, they tell you to grab it by the grip, or not the grip, the magazine, and they tell you to pull it into yourself. If you do that, you're actually adjusting the balance point, and it balances better. And if you ever take a class where you're a rifle class, and you're actually learning how to shoot, how to mitigate stoppages and all the other thing, and you spend a lot of time in that class, you'll notice where your kit needs to be changed. I noticed that with my WIC build. It seems to be the perfect blend of everything that I want. I can put my light out there, or I can put a laser out there, and it doesn't throw the balance of the gun off. And that's what I think a lot of American shooters love about the AR-15 is your balance is there already. It's what you add to it that can make it really fore heavy or really rear heavy, and you don't want to do that. Maybe that's why American shooters don't like bullpups, because I've never held a bullpup, period, that is balanced. They're always kind of rear heavy, or they're heavy in weird places that we're not used to as American shooters. So, thinking that I'm a Kalashnikov guy, knowing its faults. It is already a pound heavier than the lightest AR-15 will ever be. If you build a Whatwood Stoner gun, that gun will top out around 7 pounds with optics. Okay, the Kalashnikov is 7.5 pounds unloaded. Okay, a lot of it is that weight of that reciprocating gas piston that is in the front of the gun. Anytime you add a gas piston or you have a long stroke gas piston, there's no free lunch in the 2A. You're going to have a weight exchange. Okay, and with that weight exchange, how do you balance it out? How do you make the rifle balance out? And I was thinking about this again because I've been toying with the idea of building up one of my Mossberg 500s into more of a tactical gun rather than the hunting gun I've got it kind of configured at now. And it can do both. But what kind of stuff am I going to accessorize with it? Because I don't want it to be so fore-heavy with the gun, with the barrel, and with the stuff at the end of the barrel. And I don't want it to be so light in the back so that it's kind of, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't drive right. There's a lot to these things that when you use them enough, you know where to drive it, how to drive it. Let's just be honest, with a Mossberg 500, they are not known for being light recoiling shotguns. Okay, they will knock you around. They're reliable. And the the Remington 870 is the same way. That's why I think that there's been a big push towards, the Benelli M4s, is because that recoil system that they have, that semi-automatic system, allows for so much of that harsh recoil of a 12 gauge to be absorbed. And I was thinking about this like just the accessories you would put on the gun. So on an M4 or an AR-15, what kind of rear or butt stock do you like? Have you thought about where you're going to put a sling on it? Are you going to put a sling on it? I would tell you need a sling. Definitely need a place to mount it. But there's different ways you can mount an AR sling. There's the old way, which is kind of this weird cup thing that kind of goes over the back butt. Or you can use just a straight 2-point sling and use the mounts that are already on there if you so desire to make it a retro type rifle. But in the rifle that you're going to use all the time for defense or whatever, make it as Gucci as you need it to be for the purpose you're making it. My Wick build, I have a muzzle device on it. That adds weight. That muzzle device has mitigated what little recoil the 5.56 has to where it doesn't have any recoil, but it makes it louder. Again, there's an exchange there. And when I look at those M-Lock stocks or M-Lock forends for the AR-15, they're different configurations in different places with different cutouts. But that to me allows ingress of dirt into places that it won't hurt it in the AR-15 because it's all sealed there in the front of the gun. But it also means that you're actually letting a lot of heat into your hand, especially if you scorpion grip. It's going to get hot right there by the gas block or right there where it's radiating heat from the barrel and from the gas tube. You need to think about that. The Kalashnikov, if you ever see someone scorpion gripping a Kalashnikov, I would say they're a novice. And the reason why I say that is because you will instantly get a burn on the top of your hand, your thumb specifically, if you scorpion grip a Kalashnikov. It's because of how it acts, where the gas comes out, where the heat is. There is no free lunch, like I said. You look at the G3 rifle. They have a very high cheek comb to the stock natively. And why is that? Because you have like 1.5 pounds or 2 pounds of reciprocating mass from the bolt. And it has to be able to be absorbed somewhere. And it's going straight back into your butt of your gun, but it's also going to hit a little bit on your face. It's not bad. It can be uncomfortable for a lot of people. And on my DMR setup, I actually have a collapsible stock on it with an adjustable cheek riser, okay? That was more so to make it comfortable to shoot laying from prone, so I could make decent long-range hits with it. That's something you're going to have to get used to, is like, what are you using the rifle for? And as you kit out your gun, as you plan your next build, plan accordingly. Look at those pieces. Second guess some of it. Make sure that's the one you want. Just because it looks great doesn't mean it'll work in reality. I've found that Magpul makes a lot of great furniture, and they're kind of inexpensive for what they are. But how long do they last? I have one AR-15 that's closing in on the 10,000 round range, and it's actually my daughter's now, and it's had one piece break on it, and it was the buffer tube, because the buffer tube, the gun's lower, is a polymer lower. Now, people will tell me you're full of shit because most polymer lowers won't last that long. Well, the Whatwood Stoner rifle uses a polymer lower, okay? The one I got was from Plum Crazy back in the day, and it's still on the gun, and it's still rocking and rolling. But it had a plastic buffer tube, and I should have known better and replaced that in the get-go. But what happened was the buffer spring retaining detent came out through the top of it. It's just a weak part of the buffer tube. And when I replaced it, gun's up and running again. My daughter's had no issues with it. It's still going, and she loves the gun. She likes the weight of it. She likes the accessories it has, and she likes it exactly as it is. Probably because Daddy made it. But I was thinking about that with my son's rifle. So my 16-year-old, I built him one because he was getting to that age where he needs his own rifle. And I used Magpul furniture for everything, mostly because it was cost-effective, but it also was something that my son had seen and liked. The grip on it is different than the AR-15's normal stock grip in the little parts kit you get. I don't know anybody that has ever been a huge fan of it. It works, but it has the wrong checkering in the wrong places, and if God help you, if you got one of the older ones that has little finger swell that is in the exact wrong place, if you're shooting for a long time, it'll start rubbing on parts of you, and while that doesn't seem like a big deal, run through a class all day, and you'll see what happens with that. Go play airsoft and try out some of these accessories on an airsoft gun, and you'll see which one works for you and which one doesn't if you play a whole match for the whole day. Because that is something that I will give up to when I played airsoft, is I learned a lot about what kind of kit works, not just for the AR-15 or for what you're going to carry, how you're going to carry your magazines, that type of thing. I learned a lot there, and it was a cheaper way to learn on the job, so to speak. I wasn't in the field like in Afghanistan or Iraq, but I got to take a lot of long marches and a lot long ruck marches, and played a very active role when I played, that I got to realize that, maybe this strap's in the wrong place. Hey, you know what? This thing is hotter than hell in New Mexico. This probably won't work long term. When you sweat enough because you're just carrying what you have, same thing goes for the accessories you put on the gun. That awesome looking stock or that awesome looking bipod that you threw on there, will it serve you when you're using it? And is it going to be how you're using it all the time? Because what you'll notice is that keeping it simple kind of works a lot. And with whether it's a Kalashnikov or it's an AR-15, those accessories you add on it, ounces equal pounds, pounds equals pain. Anytime you're carrying it for a long time, whether it's hunting, whether it's, like I said, training, or you're actually getting out and doing the job, those accessories add weight, and they don't necessarily give you a benefit if you're not using them. Maybe it's just a look thing. Maybe it's just you want to make it look cool and awesome. If your gun sits in the safe the whole time and you're never running it as hard as I run some of mine, that makes a lot of sense. I'm not a trigger snob. I know people that are. Why do they put a new trigger in is because they absolutely have to have it because it's part of their psyche, but it also affects how they shoot. They know enough, at least I hope they do, to know that that lighter trigger or that set trigger that they have with the poundage and the way it breaks, whether it's a single stage or a two-stage trigger, those things matter to them, okay? If you're building a retro rifle, don't you want the retro experience, though? That's been the heartburn for me. I would love to have a retro, M16, like A4 flat top with a Trijicon optic on top of it, but with the actual 20-inch barrel and the normal military non-adjustable stock, the rifle stock. Why? Because I think they look great. But is it really practical for what I would use it for? Probably not. It'd probably be one of those collector's items I took out. It'd be a safe queen until I, used it for that day or whatever and went back to using my normal AR-15. My normal AR-15 is kind of tuned exactly how I want it. And that's what I'm kind of advocating for, is if you're tuning your weapon and you're looking at all these whiz-bag accessories, you can pay a ton of money for them, but is it really benefiting you to do it? That new foregrip or that new forend that you're looking at for your AR-15, if it actually adds a pound or half a pound more weight to the gun, does that throw the balance off of your gun? Does it matter because of your shooting style? A lot of people are recreational shooters. They don't put a lot of rounds through their guns. I tend to do that. And that's because I try to train. So I've learned what I like, But as you're getting into the sport, as you're getting to be the 2A advocate that I hope you are, you start looking at these accessories and you're like, well, where do I start? Who knows more about this than I do? And if you do a little research, they'll tell you if it'll fit your gun. And for the AR-15, that should be the easiest thing possible. Either going to get an accessory for the forend that will fit a rifle length, a mid-length, or a carbine length. And what I'm talking about is the length of the gas tube and where the gas block sits, because that matters when you put the furniture on it. Okay? Same with the butt stock. For the AR-15, there's the civilian normal AR-15, which is a little thinner for the buffer tube. And then you get to the military spec, mil spec. Nowadays, most things are mil spec for the buffer tube. But what that matters is when you buy a butt stock, and you buy one if you so happen to have a civilian buffer tube, you'll find out really readily that it's loose when you put on a military, a butt stock that's made for a military buffer tube. And maybe it'll rattle, maybe it'll slide more than you want it to, and it may not lock and engage. But this is all research stuff that you can overcome. And with the Kalashnikov, if you're accessorizing it, I'm going to tell you right now, if you think that you're going to just bolt this accessory right onto the Kalashnikov, you're wrong. Every Kalashnikov I've ever dealt with, whether it's American-made, European-made, Russian-made, you're going to have to trim parts out of it because they're not going to fit initially. You may have to just sand something off to make it, sand it a little bit so that it'll slide on better. But it's not going to just slip on. I've never had that experience. The Palmetto State Armory AK that I have, my son now has, my middle son, it was a 19th birthday gift for him. He wants to keep it simple. He doesn't want to accessorize it. He doesn't want to throw all the stuff like he sees on mine because he knows it adds weight. But I can tell you when I built that gun, because I bought it as one of those kits that they had to where you learn how to build a Kalashnikov. All I did was put the fire control group in it and the stock. That's it. It was already headspace. It was already built. Having built an AK now, an actual one, like bent the flats, riveted the trunnions in, pressed the barrel in, all that other stuff. I've built the Kalashnikov. I've built one. I've got the t-shirt. I know what you have to do now to build that. But what I noticed with that Palmetto State Armory build is I had to sand the handguards so where they would slide into the receiver, because even a stock one just wouldn't slide in. And that's supposed to be built off of Polish spec guns. Now what that means is that it should have been normal AKM pieces that would work on it no matter what. But that's not the case. I have never had a Kalashnikov, never, with any accessory. No, I take that back. There's a Magpul, they call it the Zhukov stock, that fit on my AKM, my Romanian AK, my Wasser 10, that I did not have to modify at all. The thing worked from the factory as intended. I just had to slide it on, put the screws that it came with in, and the gun, it worked. It was the first time I had to think really hard, because I've changed a lot of furniture on Kalashnikovs, not for just myself, for other people, and I've never had the experience for that it just slides on. Don't be discouraged. Just know that if you're going the Kalashnikov route, you're going to have to become more of a tuner or a tinkerer. You're going to have to work on the gun and its accessories to make it work right. Modify the accessory. Don't modify the gun. Because if you modify the gun, you can't undo that without doing a lot of other things. So these are my pieces of advice for you as you're looking at kitting out and building your new guns. I look forward to seeing some builds. I have some friends that are in the process of building another AR. That's great. It's like building models the way I see it nowadays. If you like those things, great. You should accessorize them. But think about your accessories before you do it. Is it going to modify it enough or make it look cool enough that it makes it worth doing? Like, share, subscribe, be great.